Recording. Okay. Okay, it's recording. So first of all, thank you, Craig, to accepting like doing this interview with us. I always remember that the game that introduced me to the Sega universe was Sonic 2.
Yeah, me too.
So having you here, it's like unbelievable for me because I'm talking like to a hero of my childhood.
Well, thank you. It's very surreal that after all this time, you know, and talking and meeting people like you guys and
Yeah.
realizing what this, the impact this had on people, is just it's heartwarming and fun and a little scary. It's a little, I say it's a little surreal, but I'm glad I was very lucky to be a part of it. Very lucky.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that some of the games that you worked at, they were life-changing for a lot of people. They really influenced many people that I know. Me personally, I remember Sonic 2. The first Sonic game that I played was Sonic 1, and it was at a friend's house. And after that, I begged my mother to buy a Mega Drive for me. And the first game that I had was Sonic 2. It was just released, and it kind of shaped my life in many ways.
Yeah, it's
A lot of people actually.
Yeah.
Sonic 2, it's regarded by most fans as the best 2D Sonic game. It was extremely revolutionary for many people.
it's one of the stories. Now, this wasn't Sonic. This was Spyro,
Mhm.
but a story that really it took me by surprise was for the past few years I've been working at a children's museum here in LA, and they have a every Thursday morning you could sign up, and it was a show and tell. You could bring in something interesting and
Mhm.
just spend 15 minutes talking about it with everybody. And lots of people there says, "Oh, Craig, you got to bring some of your artwork in, some video game stuff." So I brought in some stuff, and as I'm talking, most people there knew I made games,
Mhm.
but they didn't know specifics, which games or
Yeah.
when. And as I'm talking, and as I get to my time at Insomniac and start talking about Spyro, my boss, my direct supervisor, his eyes kind of open up and his jaw kind of drops a little bit, and he's just staring at me as I'm talking. And afterwards he goes, "You made Spyro?" he goes because that was his game. That was the game, because he was younger than I am. That was the game he grew up on. And so it was this weird, because he was also my boss.
Yeah.
He was my boss, but kind of fanboy, And so it was very fun. It was very that was some time ago, and it started to really make it click for me.
Mhm.
What these games I worked on mean to people, that they're more than just games for some people.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and that's also what really prompted me, that and a couple things, to start digging through my boxes and finding stuff and getting it out there, because no one's enjoying it sitting in a box in my garage.
Yeah, of course. And we're eager to get to that part, actually. But I want to try to keep things chronologically a little.
Oh, please, and stay on me for that. I tend to go off on tangents and talk.
Please
So
feel free.
Please keep me online.
And you know what, Craig? The Sega Genesis or Mega Drive for us, it's still going here in Brazil. So there is a company named Tectoy that they have the license, and they are still producing like the Sega Genesis here. So a lot of people are like playing, like Sonic 2, because the Sonic 2 comes with the console. So it's very
that's awesome.
Important for us.
It's a huge legacy.
Yes.
Actually, fun fact.
I mean, when things went 3D, I mean, even when they first started going 3D, everyone jumped on that 3D, which from a business standpoint, you needed to do.
Yeah.
But there's so many good games that could
And now
side-scrolling
I
type
feel like
games.
I feel like in the past few years, the industry started realizing that there's still a lot of potential in 2D games.
Yeah.
And that's great because for people like us who grew up with them and love them, it's very nostalgic, and I feel like we value those games more than maybe the newer generations. But they're getting into the hype train as well. They're getting excited with 2D games and all.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, do you remember the first time you played a video game, and when did you decide that you wanted to work with video games?
See, I feel really bad because I've been so fortunate and worked on these games, and it was all kind of by accident.
Oh, yeah?
Because as much as I like games, and as involved as I have been in some pretty huge games, I'm not a hardcore gamer. It's which is one of the reasons when I've worked designing games, I'm not a very good game designer because I haven't seen everything. You know, you need to play lots to know what works, what doesn't work, what's been done, what hasn't been done. But to get back to your question, my first game system was a ColecoVision. So it's just basically Pong. My neighbor had an Atari 2600, which I would still love to get. I want to get one of those. There's you know, and but after that, I didn't play much. I played arcade games, Asteroids, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Battlezone, all these arcade games. That's where I spent most of my time playing games back in high school. And then I kind of stopped. And so I didn't have any, you know, the Nintendo. I hadn't even heard about a Genesis and Sega. I mean, kind of heard about them, seen ads, but didn't think about it. And so the first time I really played a Nintendo was after. Well, let me say, I'll try not to get too far off on tangents.
Oh, that's okay.
The way I got into the industry, because I was doing computer graphics, business graphics, boring pie charts. And I was married at the time, and I would come home. Did not like the job. So I'd come home, and my wife would have the newspaper and have jobs circled that she thought I'd be interested in. And one day she called me at work and says, "I have found your job. I have found your dream job." And it was an ad from Sega that I kept this. I know I have it buried somewhere. Hopefully I haven't lost it. It said, wanted video game artist and game designer, no experience necessary. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's me. That would be fun. And so I called, you know, sent in a basic resume and got a call back saying, yes, we'd like to meet you. And here's what we'd like you to bring or prepare, you know, send us. And that's when I realized that I hadn't even touched a Nintendo. I'd never played Mario. And I'm like, oh crap. So I called a friend and go, hey, can I borrow your NES? And he brought it over, and for the next 2 or 3 days, I played Mario and Duck Hunt and every game he had. And so that was the first home system I played was a Nintendo, but it was somebody else's because I realized I needed to know a little something.
I feel like a lot of people in the industry kind of had that start. They were working in their respective areas, and then suddenly an opportunity to work on a video game company appears.
Well, it was a small industry at that point.
Yeah.
And prior to that, it had been almost exclusively programmers. You know, they did the art was little boxes moving around.
Yeah.
So you needed an artist to do the box art, and that was it. And so about the time the Genesis kicks in, now you need real artists. Now you got, you know, it's beyond the programmers. And so, yeah, so I'm guessing a lot of people that came in probably have similar stories. yeah, so it was very lucky. I kind of fell in, really no experience necessary. Yes, that's me. Sign me up.
And how was like your experience like going to work like for Sega? Like do you remember what was like the first project?
I thought when I first applied for the job, I thought it was going to be their arcade division, making arcade games. So I was honestly a little, let down that it was going to be this home system. In hindsight, I'm very, very glad it was the home system and not the arcade systems, for just lots of reasons. But just more, I think, because it's a handful of people know the arcade games. Everybody knows Sonic. and the Genesis and their Mega Drive. So it was then I thought I was going to be working on Dick Tracy, which was the game Sega Technical Institute, STI, was working on, and that's my STI jacket there. As I said,
very nice.
I can pull those up closer in a little bit if you'd like.
That's really nice.
Yeah,
and that jacket's from the Sonic Tuesday, right?
Yeah, Sonic Tuesday, and then the one next to it is specifically Sega Technical Institute, and then my Sega Letterman jacket back there.
That's so nice.
That's so nice.
So yeah, so I knew they were doing a Dick Tracy game based on the movie, and so once again was a little upset to come in and find out, no, you're not working on that, because it was almost done. And so the first game we did was Kid Chameleon, which once I got into it, I was thrilled, terrified, because I had no experience and learning animation. I'd never done animation before, and a whole new system and a whole new environment, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I had some very severe anxiety issues that I'd been able to deal with my whole life. And I was able to deal with at Sega, basically because I had some good people around me and I was still kind of young and naive. Yeah, so the first game was Kid Chameleon.
Wow, and it's such a big game, with a lot of different mechanics.
It's huge. That's a fun one to bump into people that know it, because the people that know it love it.
Yeah.
But most people know, I'd never heard about that.
Yeah, I remember that when Kid Chameleon was released, it was kind of one of the objectives was showing that Sega was for cool kids and Nintendo was for like small children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because Kid Chameleon, the cover art and all, he's always cool. He has a leather jacket and all. It's really nice, and it's a very American game, because Sega until then had mostly Japanese games.
Yes,
and that they were kind of maybe a little odd for American audience.
Well, that was the purpose of STI. Mark Cerny, who headed up and started STI, that was his goal, was to try and blend American and Japanese styles. The whole plan was for Japan to send people over to join STI, and for STI to send people Americans to Japan and learn from each other and learn styles. So from there on out, about half of STI's team were Japanese. Unfortunately, we never sent anybody to Japan to work. I got to go to Japan, and that's a whole other story I'm sure we can talk about. But no Americans ever went to Japan to work on a Japanese team, which was a little depressing for me. I was hoping to be able to do that. But
I feel like Mark Cerny actually worked in Japan with Sega for quite some time in the 80s, right?
Who did? Mark?
Mark?
Yes.
Mark Cerny worked.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That became instrumental in how Sonic 2 ended up being done here.
Yeah.
So, because of his connections and his friends in Japan.
That's very interesting. And you said in another interview that when you guys first got the demo for Sonic 1, it was a beautiful game. It was stylish and all, but it wasn't so fun to play because it didn't have rings yet, or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, we got it. And well, when Mark designed came up with the idea for Kid Chameleon, he had two goals, from the best of my memory. Two goals. One, he wanted to make the longest game in on the Genesis, which he did. It was, and but also Sega was looking for a mascot, to go up against Mario, and he was hoping our little character Kid or Kevin or whatever he ended up being called would be that mascot. And then we got the first Sega game, or first Sonic game, and as you just said, beautiful. So technologically, some really cool stuff. The loops, as simple as those look.
Yeah.
Mark had to sit down and go, how are they doing that? Collision wise, and you're passing in front of and behind art, and the water effects. Okay, this is really cool. What are they doing? But we'd play it for a couple of minutes and put the controller down and go back to work. And I wish I had better notes on this, but sometime later, we got the next a new version where the rings worked. And crap, man, it was wow. Now we're fighting over who got to play, because now it was almost addictive.
Yeah,
it was interesting to such a little thing completely transformed the game.
Yeah, and it's a huge part of the game because I remember, like in Mario you had coins that you get, but they're not used for anything. They're useless. In Sonic you have those rings, and every time something hits you, you lose them, and you have to grab them as fast as you can.
That gets the adrenaline going, because
exactly.
I'm trying to remember on that first version we played if there are rings at all. I think there were. I think you were picking up rings, but when you got hit, nothing happened. But you would fly and bounce, but no rings flew. But I think you were picking up rings. So once again, very Mario-esque there.
And also I remember the first stage on Sonic 1 Green Hill Zone. It took like a lot of time for them to create this stage, and the palm trees in the background, they had a pseudo 3D effect to them. And when the game was released, people thought it was crazy. It was so revolutionary and beautiful and stuff like that. And from an artist point of view, I suppose this game must have had an impact on you guys, right?
It was a very different look. That polygonal quasi 3D look. It's one of those games where you can pull it up and instantly say that's Sonic.
Yeah. The special stage has some pseudo polygonal fish and birds and stuff like that in the background, and it was crazy because if you don't know better, you feel like the game is running in 3D stuff. In the middle of it.
That was that was a brilliant decision, whether it was a conscious decision of let's play up the 3D look, or if it was just an intuitive artist's call somewhere. I don't know the history on that, but
I feel like it was probably a conscious decision, because on every Sonic game they had some kind of pseudo 3D stuff going on. So on Sonic 2, the special stage when you're running and grabbing stuff, it wasn't actually 3D, but it looks.
Oh, that was a miserable level to work on. I don't. Programming for me is this voodoo black magic over my head. I don't understand it at all. But I know, boy, that I can remember hearing the programmers complaining, and I'm trying to remember if I know I did some work on that 3D stuff, and I don't remember specifically what it was. I know the art director was Tim Skelly, who has recently just passed away, unfortunately. I'm trying to remember, because I remember there was just so much. I look at that and all I feel is frustration. I don't remember specifically what. It's just a very frustrating level.
Yeah.
to watch. And we had to, I don't know if this translates, but and I think it ended up still being in the game. I can't remember, but the whole, you had the red ball, you're collecting the blue balls, and it was, I think it said get blue balls. Blue balls here is something very, very different.
That's a very funny story, because when the Japanese created the special stage for Sonic 3, they called it "Get the Blue Balls." And when they showed it to you guys were like, well, you can't call this stage "Get the Blue Balls." And then they changed it for "Get the Blue Spheres." And when I was a kid, I always thought it was kind of weird, because sphere isn't a very simple word.
No, so it's not a good
get
word.
The blue spheres felt kind of weird, but get the blue balls obviously would feel even weirder.
Yeah.
So I get why they did that. And on Sonic 2, one of the levels that they had to change the name, it was originally called Genocide City, right? Yeah, and they didn't think.
No, you can't use the word genocide.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they didn't know exactly what it meant. So it sounds like a cool.
No, it's a nice sound. Genocide City. It's a nice sound. But it's words have history and meaning beyond.
I feel like you guys must have helped them a lot on this kind of stuff all the time, because they had no experience or they were kind of clueless in some ways.
Well, because if you go back, all the Japanese games, not all, but a lot of Japanese games, there's still a lot of English in the games. Which reminds me, I'm trying to think which game it was. I can't remember if I was at Sega or if I was at Insomniac. And we had to change all the signage to Japanese. I could actually have two different stories in both. When I was at Sega, we had to have, was it Kid Chameleon? We had to change a bunch of the signage to Japanese. And it was stuff that clearly it's like stop and go and these words, and we're like, but in the Japanese games, they use English for this exact purpose. Oh no, you got to make everything Japanese. Wow. And which made no sense. And then for Spyro, we had to, on at least Spyro 1, we had to go through for the Japanese version and make all the eyes brown. Why? Let's look at some Japanese anime and Japanese games. Eyes are every color under the sun. Really big.
Eyes, hair, they're always
so it was just this very strange going the other direction.
I feel like localization has always had a very weird history in games and stuff like that. There's a joke that goes around that any Japanese game, the American cover, the characters are always angry. So when you see Sonic, the Japanese cover, he's kind of cool and all, but in the American cover, he's always kind of angry.
More attitude.
Yeah. Kirby, there's a lot of characters.
It's interesting as it's and the name title changes. Sometimes it makes sense. Like Genocide City. You got to change that. But what a game's called, here versus what the game's called in Japan versus what the game's called in Europe, gets changed. And sometimes you're like, why? I mean, Spyro again. Spyro 2 was Ripto's Rage, and Ripto's a made-up word. It actually comes from, if you look at Spyro written in Japanese, it looks like Ripto in English. And so that's where we got the name for this boss, the bad guy in Spyro 2 was Ripto. And for some reason, Europe, no, let's call it Gateway to Glimmer. And we're like, okay. The translation. I feel like sometimes there's reasons, sometimes you're like, why? I think it's sometimes it's people trying to prove that they're doing their job.
Exactly. I feel like sometimes, especially with Japanese people in the video game industry, because they feel like they kind of own it and stuff like that. They want you to change it just because they can make you change it. So
yeah, sometimes I get that feeling. Or got that.
I guess.
You know, and whether it's my guess is it's not even the dev team most of the times. Although Yuji Naka, the programmer for Sonic, he was definitely one of those
control
Japanese
freaks.
Better.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times that's probably coming from marketing. At least on the American side, I knew a lot of the dumb stuff was being pushed by marketing, definitely not by the dev team.